Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Apples and Genos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name is Nate Groot Niblink. I'm the creator of Apples and Genos, originator of the Zero G Draft Strategy. And in this podcast, I'm going to go over the most puzzling players league wide as submitted by the Apples and Genos Discord server. Let's get it. Welcome on in to the Puzzling Players, last one of the calendar year 2024. We've got some business to take care of here before we get started. First one I want to mention is I talk a lot about the Patreon. A quick Patreon plug at the beginning here. I'm going to be doing a new Patreon only episode next week, right after the Puzzling Players live stream next week. So if you're interested in getting a hold of that, what I am going to be talking about are my mid-season top players to buy and sell. A sneak peek there, big name if you're watching on YouTube. That's definitely going to be featured prominently for me. But yeah, I think that that's going to be a really interesting episode. Supporter tier, $2 a month gets you in the door for that. So if that's something you're interested in, my mid-season top players to buy and sell will be coming out next week for patrons only. So get your biscuits in there, as Blake would say. Second order of business, we had a giveaway that we announced last week, Christmas Spirit giveaway, and we had definitely a bunch of people came through with some reviews, some comments, left it in there, and gave us some screenshots. And so we got a couple winners here, Ground Beef in the Discord and Hako Taco. Both will be receiving some Apples and Junos merchandise. I'll be reaching out via DM where you found me on Discord, so I'll be reaching out to get some mailing info and we'll get that out to you. But definitely glad to get into the spirits and have one more gift giving experience before we truly dive into 2025. With that being said, I want to address some comments that are coming in. Steve is in here. Happy New Year, Nate and A&G. Same to you, sir. I know you're a Fiala owner in one league. What are your thoughts about him this season? Someone offered me him for Tippett in a Cats league. Goals, assists, power play points, block shots, hits. Who do you like better? Yeah, obviously Tippett gives you the hits a lot more than Fiala does. Fiala's high on the list, so we can start there. 4 goals and no assists in his last 5. About 19 and a half minutes average time on ice. That's come up in a big way as of late. 65th shots per 60, 53rd individual scoring chances 4 per 60. The on ice numbers not so great. And yeah, it is a situation, I've spoken about it before, where you don't ever feel like terrific about the even strength lines out there in LA because they are really running a top 9 kind of situation. Fiala playing with Danault and Laferriere in the last game against the Flyers here. 184th, Corsi 4 per 60, 225th. Scoring chances 4 per 60 over the last 5. On the season, it's a 33 goal, 51 point pace in 18 minutes average time on ice. 67% IPP, 8.9% on ice shooting percentage is definitely super low for Fiala, but it might not be that great if he continues to not be with the best even strength teammates, and then also if he doesn't get a lot more ice time. Like if this 19 and a half minutes just kind of takes hold and that's the new normal for the rest of the season, I mean, sign me up. I'm very excited about Fiala, but that is the risk that you're taking on with Fiala at the moment. I would say that Fiala has a lot more upside than Owen Tippett does, but if you need the hits from Tippett, then I think you stick with Tippett. If you can forego the hits, like if you've got a lot of other kind of core players that you don't need those hits, or if, you know, your league isn't super hip to streaming hits and you feel like you can just go out and stream a big time hitter every single week. Like if Kiefer Sherwood was lingering on your Bangers Cats waiver wire for a long time and you were able to pick him up, then maybe you're the person who can afford to not roster Owen Tippett and you can take that swing on Fiala. Also, if you're at the point in the season, you're 9-2, you're tops in your league by a fair margin, you feel like you're sitting pretty and you want to take a swing on some big time production, Fiala definitely has that within the range of outcomes here. So I think it is a little bit dependent in a Cats league on what you need. Definitely both of these two players will run hot and cold throughout the course of the season. Drewski's in here as well. Good stuff. Steve also asks, you mentioned in your waiver wire show about Gudis needs to be picked up in banger leagues. It's a clown league if he's available. What are your thoughts about category specialists like Gudis? Yeah, I think that they pretty much should be rostered. I mean, Gudis is probably a bit of a special case just because of all the off nights, so it makes him just a perfect guy to roster. In Anaheim, he's going to have off nights like every single week, and so in a Bangers Cats, he provides hits and blocks at a pretty consistent clip. That's just a huge thing in my mind. I don't think you can get away from it too much. So, Gudis definitely should be rostered in Bangers Cats leagues that have hits and blocks in my mind, and there are some others. That list is relatively short, I would say, like Gudis, Jeremy Lauzon, Kiefer Sherwood, and there's not too many guys after that I would classify as these guys must be rostered in a Bangers Cats leagues. So yeah, I think he's kind of in that elite tier list for me, and the other guys I would much more classify as stream in, stream out, like a Mark Kastelich, tons and tons of hits this year, right? But I think he's still on a streamer level for me. I don't think you have to roster Mark Kastelich all year long just for those hits that he's giving you. So I think it is still a question. With a lot of other players, but Gudis for me is still in the tier that he should be rostered season long in Bangers Cats. Jordan says, Happy New Year, Nate. Hope you have a good holiday. Let's get it. Same to you. Matt says, new oven mitt giveaway when? You'll have to talk to Blake about that one. He's the one who specializes in the oven mitts. CG also in here with a Happy New Year. Happy New Year to everybody out here. Drewski asks, think Bunting can keep this up? We can throw Michael Bunting on here and talk a little bit about it. Yeah, happy that I talked up Michael Bunting a little bit on the waiver wire show. He's got 4 goals, 5 points, and his last 5 was instrumental in my defeat in Cuffle this past week, which was very painful for me personally, but I'll try not to hold that against him. Just over 16 minutes average time on ice, 216 shots per 60, 105 individual scoring chances for, 170 Corsi for, 205 on ice scoring chances for per 60. So definitely the underlying metrics are not terrific for a guy like Bunting. He's playing with Malkin and Beauvillier at even strength in the last game here. He is playing on the Sidney Crosby, Rickard Rakell, Brian Rust, what I would call the top power play unit there. So there is that going for him for sure, and he's hot at the moment. So for me, Michael Bunting is still just a streamer. I'm happy to roster him this week. You know, it's a good schedule for the Pittsburgh Penguins this week, especially at the end of the week. So definitely Bunting is a guy who should be rostered in almost every league this week, just for the Friday, Sunday. There's only 3 teams with a Friday, Sunday schedule this week. So to get away from that heavy Saturday, rostering players from Anaheim, Pittsburgh, and Chicago to get away from that, definitely something that you should be doing. But yeah, I think that might be where it ends. But, you know, you have 3 more games this week to get more of a sample size on Bunting. Maybe he starts to improve the underlying metrics and you start to feel a little bit better about it. I tend to think he's just a streamer, though. CG, with Ghost out, do you claim Smith or Burns in a 12-team points league? Yeah, Ty Smith was the one who's getting the top power play. It sounds like that is continuing, at least for the time being. That was a tweet from Ryan Henkel this morning at 11:36 that Ty Smith is still on power play 1. That being said, like, it is Ty Smith. Ty Smith was requested. He is on the list here. This is a guy who has played 1 NHL game this season. He had 16-23. He had 1 shot, 1 hit, 2 blocks, and that was with power play time. There was a time when Ty Smith was a pretty highly regarded prospect. He was 17th overall pick in the 2018 NHL entry draft, so first round pick there. He's had some decent AHL seasons, 23-24. He scores 9 goals, 43 points in 63 games for Wilkes-Barre Scranton. And then this year so far for the Chicago Wolves, he's scored 3 goals and 10 points in 13 games, so that's not too bad. But definitely it really does seem like he's just a kind of offensive defenseman call-up. You know, Carolina has done this with Shane Gostisbehere this year, right? So it feels like they really did just bring up Ty Smith to fulfill that specific role, that specific power play role. And it's hard to get too excited about a situation like that where you think that it could really be much more. Realistically, Shane Gostisbehere wasn't having a ton of minutes on this blue line anyway, so does it really impact a whole lot of other stuff? Probably not. All that to say, I don't think I'm like super in on Ty Smith or Brent Burns. If you have to choose between both of them, I think, I mean, I guess I would probably take Brent Burns because I feel like it's almost as likely that Ty Smith doesn't even last a week in that role. I think I would take Brent Burns just because he can probably get something going at some point throughout the week. But yeah, that's uh, that's a situation where I'm not excited about either option. Verhage, tired of waiting. Who can I realistically target for him? Verhage's on this list again. I'm going to be preaching the same thing again. He's been wildly snake bitten this year. Really good underlying metrics. Has run through a tough spell here again, and the underlying metrics have gone down a little bit as well. I still think he's a buy low, so I don't think you're going to get much for him at the moment, right? Only 2 assists in his last 17 minutes average time on ice, 239th shots per 60. On ice stats are still terrific, and it's a 20 goal, 60 point pace for Carter Verhaeghe on the season now, and that's just not going to get it done. I don't think anybody's like super excited to go out and get it. They're running some weird lines here in this game today. Verhaeghe, Boakfist, Lundell are the lines, and they're running Luosterainen on the second line with Bennett and Kachuk, and they're running Rodriguez with Reinhardt and Barkov. So that's not looking good for Carter Verhaeghe. I just don't know what you can realistically trade him for that would have any kind of potential to outproduce him rest of season. I don't think that exists. For what it's worth, Verhaeghe's still on the top power play as well. So I know you're tired of waiting, but I think you should still be doing that. Kevin asks, what are your thoughts on Luke Hughes versus Matheson? Not so sure that Matheson is getting power play one back, but he gives better per riffs. Other defensemen are Werenski, Hedman, Theodore, and Bouchard. So yeah, you've definitely got a solid contingent of defensemen. You're not hurting at the position. I think you can take the upside swing on Luke Hughes in your situation. Yeah, right now, Matheson is probably not going to get it done in your league, right? I do think that in some deeper leagues, Matheson is actually kind of a sneaky buy low because if he does get power play one, that could really help you if he gets moved. Like if Montreal decides to move off of Matheson, like make him available for trade, he could be the target for some teams. I don't know that he's going to get traded, in division or anything, but like, would Florida be interested in him to run the power play? Ekblad has done that, but I don't think that's their preferred stance on any of this. So, yeah, could Florida be interested in that? Like Toronto maybe would even be interested in something like that. Yeah, it just seems like there's outs, basically, I guess is what I'm saying there. And so, yeah, I have to wonder if that's at least a possibility. He's a very affordable contract. He's only 30 years old, 4.875 million for this year and next. Not too bad. So I do think if they want to move Michael Matheson, they'll have plenty of suitors. It's just about whether they want to and where he goes, whether that'll be better, but it's probably not going to be worse than him playing not on power play one on a team as bad as Montreal. Chris Nelson, would you trade Stamkos, Boldy, or JT Miller for Gustafson? Standard points league with shots. No, I'm not interested in trading any of those three for a goaltender. CG, Bennett, Fiala, Drouin. I assume this is going back to the Verhage comment. If you can target one of them, you could potentially, I guess, target Fiala. I don't think you're getting better worth. Like, I don't think now that Fiala scored 4 goals in his last 5, you're probably not even getting Fiala for him. But I think Verhage has higher potential than all three of those players. Dirty Deeds, hey Nate, happy holidays. Any chance you could go over Bennett and Vetrano? We could throw those two in for a quick moment. Sam Bennett and Frank Vetrano. Let's take a look here. Neither of these guys have been producing as of late, obviously. Underlying metrics still looking pretty good. Bennett just under 60 minutes average time on ice, 57 shots per 60, 74th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. I think Bennett really ran hot at the beginning of the year. 31 goals, 63 point pace. And that's probably about where he lives, if not even a little bit down from that. Like 25 to 30 goals, 55 point pace is probably maybe a little bit more accurate to where I'd peg him for the rest of the year. But yeah, I think that Bennett is solid, but you should not expect what you got at the beginning of the year. for the rest of the season for sure. Frank Vetrano has 0 points his last 19 plus minutes, fourth in shots per 60, 75th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. He is a checker. He does that. 22 goal, 41 point pace, sixth in shots per 60 in the league on the season. The 19 minutes is really keeping me coming back, and he's really low. IPP is low, shooting percentage is low, on ice shooting percentage is low. I do think that there is a solid bounce back coming for Vetrano. Really nice that Cronin appears to be really valuing Troy Terry and Frank Vetrano as true top line players and giving them a lot of minutes here. And so I'm actually pretty in on Vetrano rest of season. I don't think he's like a top of the lineup guy, but especially if hits get you anything in your league, I think that Frank Vetrano is absolutely worth keeping at the moment. Brad Zuckerman, 1 year points only league, redraft Thursday for the rest of the year. Can only keep 2 of McCann, Olofsson, Peterka, Slavkovsky. Interesting. McCann I'm keeping for sure. And then it's really a conversation for me between Peterka and Olofsson. I think I'm taking Peterka. Yeah, I'll take Peterka. Olofsson has upside for sure, just playing alongside Eichel and Stone if he can maintain that role, but I'm not sure he can. So I think I'll take Peterka, who I think is the much more talented player there. This is, I think, the same question with maybe a little bit more detail from Chris about trading for Gustafsson. I'm not interested in trading for a goalie in general. Your goalies are Veg and Mrazek. I'd be happy with that tandem, honestly. And I'm definitely not trading for Philip Gustafsson. Trading for goaltenders who are kind of at the height of their powers, as it would seem, with Philip Gustafsson is a pretty sure way to tank your fantasy season if you go and look at it historically. A lot of people, they thought they struck gold with Joy Decord and Connor Ingram last year, but it was actually like Charlie Lindgren, who ended the year on a big run and won people championships. I feel like it could be the same with Philip Gustafsson for the rest of the year. He could have a good year for the rest of the year. That's possible, but it's not something I'm going to bet on given, the likelihood of most of these things, how we've seen it play out over the last number of years. Jack is in here. Happy New Year, Nate. Can't wait to see what 2025 has in store for A&G. You and me both. Thanks for that. Josh asks, I have injured players galore. Need to decide, do I hold on to Allmark in a points league? I don't think you have to, but I'd like to for sure. Ottawa seems to be trending in the right direction. It depends. It depends who else you have, obviously, right? You could maybe give us a list and we can see who I might prefer to drop. But Allmark is in a spot where he's going to get volume regardless of how he's playing, really. And Ottawa as a team seems to be playing pretty well as of late. So ideally, I'd like to hang on to Allmark. What are your thoughts on Luke Hughes versus Matheson? Oh, this is the same question, no? I think we already answered this one above. Yeah. No problem. We got that one. Wab, who would drop between Devin Taves, Ekholm, and Fowler? Man, that is tough. Devin Taves has had a really weird year, and I don't know if it's like just a situation where he's given up everything to Makar, or if they're asking him to do something different than he's done. It feels like he should be much better than this, but there comes a point in time where you have to accept that maybe it's just a different scenario, and a different role for Devin Taves on this current iteration of the Avalanche. I think it would be Taves that I would drop. Josh asks, also this week, Celebrini or Marchenko? Tough question. I think I'm going to go with Marchenko. I think it's maybe a little bit more sustainable, his production there, but yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. It's a 50-50 question for sure. TD's in here. Hashtag Zergy, appreciate you. CG offered Velarde for McCann. Do it. You were offered Velarde to trade away McCann. That's an interesting one. I think it's relatively even. I don't know that I have like a massive lean one way or the other. I could see it both ways, honestly. You could take Velarde now, but he's definitely as hot as he'll be all year long at the moment. And yeah, I guess I might take Velarde there, but it's very, very close. Very close for sure. Josh, long-term Caulfield or Line? That's Caulfield by far. CG says, thanks, no problem. All right. We've made it through the comments for now. Keep them coming. We'll get back into them. But for now, we're going to get into the list here. 20 minutes in, and we're starting the list. That's how we do it. Matt Boldy tops the list. Just 1 assist in his last 5 games, 20 and a half average time on ice, 220th in shots per 60, 128th individual scoring chances 4 per 60, 190 in Corsi 4 per 60, 119 on ice scoring chances 4 per 60. It's been a real tough stretch for Matt Boldy, now on just a 29 goal, 69 point pace on the season. Not so nice there. 70% IPP, 10.7% shooting percentage, 10.5% on ice shooting percentage. Those are not numbers that I'd be expecting to continue. I don't think Matt Boldy's a huge converter in terms of the shooting percentage. Preseason, I had him at 12.7% in my projections, but I do think that that should come back around. Obviously, it doesn't feel good that Kaprizov hasn't been there, so I think that it'll be a situation where Boldy should be better, but it's been a tough run. He had a crossbar and deflected a shot off the post in the game on Sunday. I feel like we could be having a very different discussion about Matt Boldy today if both of those had gone in. So yeah, I'm not like super concerned about it at this moment. He's clearly getting all the time on ice in the world. Kaprizov has been out. When Kaprizov is back, I feel like it should be positive for Boldy. They also have had Eriksson Ek out for a while. It's just been not a great situation. And yeah, still a young player, still finding his way. I do think that he should be much, much better in the coming days here. Jared McCann next up. He's got just 1 goal in his last 5 games. Blake and I did talk about Jared McCann in the flagship show that came out today, here on Monday if you're watching this live, yesterday if you're listening to this or watching this the day after. But I am still relatively in on Jared McCann. It's been a tough run. Blake mentioned that he thought that Jordan Eberle not being around had some negative effects on what McCann has been able to do since then. And I do think that holds some weight for me. It's definitely been a situation where those two have had good chemistry. It's hard to get excited about anything that Seattle's doing in general as of late. Their underlying numbers at 5v5 are truly atrocious, and so that's hard to get behind. But I do think that Jared McCann is good enough to kind of make things happen just on his own. And so I do expect that to rebound. I do think Jared McCann is a bit of a buy low at the moment. It's going to be a little bit tough to stomach. Maybe you don't really want to stomach that if you're going out to make some buy lows. If you're in a really good playoff spot, you may want to not even consider that. Seattle does not have a really good playoff schedule. One of the worst, in fact. Just 9 games and 3 off nights if you're playing your playoffs in weeks 22 through 24. If you're playing them in weeks 23 through 25, then what is it, 11 games and 3 off nights. So yeah, not much better there. Yeah, it's just a weird spot, and it's probably not a spot that you can get excited about at the moment. But I do think that McCann should be better. I mean, he's going to get dropped in some leagues if this continues for much longer, and you can probably swing him away from his current manager for a pretty cheap price at the moment. So it's definitely something that I'd be interested in at least kicking tires on. If you've got, a guy who's maybe you got Michael Bunting and you can swing him into Jared McCann, if you can make that happen, that's definitely something that I'd be into. Depends on your league for sure, but I think Jared McCann will be better as the season wears on. Luke Hughes next up, 2 goals, 6 points in his last 5, almost 21 minutes a night, 22nd shots per 60, 18th individual scoring chances 4 per 60, 10th on ice Corsi 4 per 60, first on ice scoring chances 4 per 60 amongst all defensemen in the last 5 games. Has really started to come on here as of late. So I really do like what Luke Hughes is bringing to the table here. The IPP is super high on the season, 68%. The on ice shooting percentage super low at 8.1. So it's all kind of just coming out in the wash, I think, at this point. Obviously, the Devils are playing well. Their underlying numbers look terrific. And it's really just power play 1 that we're waiting on for him to truly pop off. Obviously, Dougie Hamilton has been a bit embattled there, and it does feel like it might just be a matter of time. Dougie Hamilton did get back up to just under 20 minutes in the last game. But yeah, it's been a while since Dougie's had any contributions on that power play, so you got to wonder if Luke Hughes does take over that spot sometime soon. Worth monitoring for sure. Luke Hughes, at least while he's hot, should be rostered like this, right? And so you can roster him and hope that the deployment changes. But yeah, for him to really hang on, this is a guy who really is shooting at a high clip for the first time this year, and hopefully that continues. But he's also a guy who does not hit and does not block, so you really need him to continue shooting, to continue producing underlying stats at this level for him to even be fantasy relevant in his current role. If he gets power play one, then I think he can have standalone value, even if the shots fall off to some extent. But yeah, there is some caveats still with Luke Hughes in my mind. Dmitry Voronkov, 4 goals, 8 points in his last 5. We talked about the Columbus top line. Voronkov just under 18 minutes average time on ice, 29th in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60 over the last 5 games, and 16th in on ice scoring chances, 4 per 60. The thing here for me with Voronkov is that I do think he's pretty deployment dependent, whereas I think Marchenko and Monahan are like the locked in top line, top power play guys. I don't have that same feeling about Voronkov. Certainly while he's playing at this level, that'll continue. But it's taken a 22.6% shooting percentage and a 14.3% on ice shooting percentage for him to reach a 35 goal, 64 point pace till now. So yeah, that's gonna have to continue for him to really keep things going here, and I just don't know how confident I am about that. So worth keeping in the back of your mind for sure, and worth trying to figure out whether Voronkov can be that. But I mean, while he's producing at this level, absolutely, you keep this thing going. You keep him on the roster, and then you see how far it goes. But yeah, more likely than not, I think Voronkov will be a drop at some point in the future, if and when he comes off the top line or top power play, or both. Fiala, we've already talked about. Svechnikov was another player that was addressed on the flagship show, so definitely go back. Basically, Svechnikov, for Blake and I, both consider him a pretty big buy low candidate. 27 goal, 59 point pace, first in the entire league in on ice Corsi, 4 per 60. The 55% IPP should be better. The 10.8% shooting percentage should be better. Even the on ice shooting percentage could be a touch higher, and it wouldn't surprise anybody. So Svechnikov should be better, but again, it's another year of the 17.5 minute treatment for Andrei Svechnikov. Just 17 minutes in the last 5 games here. So yeah, just another season watching Radba do his work on the Carolina Hurricanes and keeping down the potential of a lot of his players for fantasy purposes. Still, Svechnikov to me is a pretty big buy low. I think a lot of Svechnikov managers are getting pretty antsy, and so I think it is a good time to go out and get that buy low offer in there. All right, back to the comments. We got a couple in here. Steve says, if you get a chance, how's RNH doing this season? He in the Fiala type player territory or worse? Let's throw Ryan Nugent Hopkins in here. Ryan Nugent Hopkins, he's got 2 points in the last 4, 19 minutes average time on ice, 306 in shots per 60. That's a tough look for sure. But yeah, Ryan Nugent Hopkins, like he's still going to be on the top power play. He did miss that game. It was just an illness, so I don't think there's anything long lasting there. But he is that player who gets moved around the lineup, right? He's never going to be the guy in Edmonton. He's going to get moved around. But I still think that he can be a lot better than he has been. Like, it's a 16 goal, 44 point pace for Nugent Hopkins. That should change. 42% IPP is just, it seems insane for a player who's had a 100 point season in the league. Certainly that was a high point for Nugent Hopkins, but it also should get better from here, in my opinion, for him. And I do think that we should expect that moving forward. I mean, he's playing on the McDavid line in practice again today. Those were the lines. So I do think that we should expect better things for Nugent Hopkins. Fiala versus Nugent Hopkins, I do think that they're probably in a similar tier. I think Fiala might have a little bit higher upside, but Nugent Hopkins I actually kind of weirdly feel a little bit more settled about, even though the results have been worse for Nugent Hopkins so far. Yeah, that's an interesting one for sure. But yeah, similar players in that there are some question marks. They don't seem to be like top tier guys in the coach's mind on their own team, and so they might get moved around a bit and might suffer from time to time as a result, might have some hot streaks and some cold streaks as a result. But overall, I do think that Ryan Nugent Hopkins should do better than he has been and is worth holding on to if you're thinking about dropping him or potentially going out to acquire if you need to. Chris asks, need to drop someone when Kaprizov returns. Would you drop Holloway or Mrazek? Hesitant to drop Mrazek since my league members hoard goalies, so there's scraps on the goalie wire. Yeah, every league is different when it comes to that. Um, for myself, I'm always not that worried about dropping a goaltender, even if my league mates are really all in on goalies all the time. Um, yeah, usually that doesn't bother me too much. Holloway, I do like the deployment at the moment, but if he's not playing games, like if you're looking at all your games for this week and Holloway isn't even making your lineup, then yeah, I think you can drop Dylan Holloway. Yeah, it depends obviously on your league size and where Dylan Holloway fits into all that. But if it's just kind of a standard point setup and he's kind of at that streamer level for you and he's not going to make your starting lineup on any night this week, absolutely, you can drop Dylan Holloway and not feel too bad about it. You got to get Kaprizov back in there. All right, moving along. Dylan Holloway is next up, so that was good timing. 3 goals, 5 points in his last five, just over 17 and a half minutes average time on ice. 14th shots per 60, 69th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. That's pretty nice. 121st in on ice Corsi, 4 per 60, 132nd in on ice scoring chances, 4 per 60. Now on a 28 goal, 52 point pace. Yeah, really, it's all about the deployment, right? So he's on the power play one now. He's on the second line there with Kyrou and Shen. And that's going to be good. There's no doubt about it. That's going to be a good spot. As I mentioned, if he's not getting into games for you, if you still got other players that you're rostering ahead of him, that you're putting into these games, the Blues play the Tuesday Winter Classic actually game against Chicago. Then they play Friday. You'll have them in for that game. That's an off night, but then again on Saturday. So if you're not really getting much out of Dylan Holloway this week, I don't think you have to hang on to him, but it is a player that I'd like to hang on to just because it looks like a good spot. The underlyings look really good as well. And so I am pretty curious to see how high Dylan Holloway can take this thing. Was a high pick when it happened back in the day. I think it was 20. Yeah, it was the 2020 NHL draft, 14th overall to the Edmonton Oilers. So he's only 23 years old. Really does feel like he's starting to find himself here in St. Louis and been given the opportunity to do so. So exciting for sure on that regard. Jesper Boqvist scored, and I streamed him in my 16-team league. That is what it's all about. Love to see that. That's great stuff. 3-2 game, and the Florida goals have come from Boqvist, Kulikov, and Losterainen. That's hockey, baby. Wow. Good stuff from the squad here so far. All right, let's get back into it. Martin Necas. Necas is also a player that we talked about, Blake and I, on the flagship show. You might want to get Blake's take as well, but definitely it's been a tough stretch. This 328th in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60 over the last 5 is really rough. Really tough look from Necas on that front. Still on a 100-point pace. He was absolutely nuclear at the beginning of the season, and I still think the underlying show that he's got more regression to come. Yeah, regression is hitting. The minutes are still there, so that part is still good for Necas. Minutes, deployment, all that is still there. But yeah, tough spot in terms of the on ice product here as of late. Yeah, if you can still sell him, I would still try to sell Martin Necas high because I do think that he's probably, when all is said and done, more of a point per game player with this current level of deployment, what he's been getting so far this year. So yeah, I still think that there's probably a player out there that you could go sell for, and it might be well worth it in my mind. So take a look and see if this streak has you concerned. There might be some reason for that, in my opinion. Frank asks, thoughts on offering Aho, Necas, Besser, Gostisbehere for Kachuk and Montour, currently first in 11-team Roto, plus minus hits league, could improve in shots and hits. That is a big package to give up. I'm not super into Montour, so maybe you could find something else other than Montour to get into. I can see how that would help you in the categories you're talking about. Maybe that's worthwhile. But yeah, I'm into selling on Natchez. I'm into selling on Besser. Gosta Spare's not a huge loss in my mind. Uh, Aho, Natchez, it feels like a little bit in terms of just like volume that you're giving up. But if you have like if this is a in an 11 team, there's probably some decent stuff on the wire if the rosters aren't too deep. Yeah, I can see it. You're getting the best player in the deal in Kachuk for sure, in my mind. Maybe I'd be trying to get a different second player than Montour, though. That might be what I'm looking for on that particular one. Josh, is this going back to a previous one? Markstrom, Sorokin, Allmark. Oh, is this the who would you drop? I think so, right? Yeah, okay. Injured players galore need to decide. Hold on to Allmark. You've got Markstrom, Sorokin, and Allmark. Yeah, I mean, if you got those guys, I'd feel a little bit better about dropping Allmark. Yeah, if you're still here, then drop who the other injured players are, and we can try to decide who you could potentially drop other than Allmark. Or if there's obviously if there's an injured player that's coming back a little bit sooner, then maybe you can hang on there. Back to the list. We already went over Verhage a little bit. I still think Verhage is potential buy low, and I would go out and look at doing that in my leaks. Have been. Florida doesn't have a great playoff schedule, but they do have off nights, so he's definitely going to help you out, at least in that regard, if not with sheer volume of games played during your playoffs. So I think he does make some sense for some teams that can afford to, let him work his way through this cold stretch before I think he will kind of rebound and become much better moving forward. So that's my take there. Jack Quinn, interesting stretch for him for sure here. He's got 2 goals, 4 assists, 6 points in his last 4 games, just over 15 minutes, average time on ice. Really nice stuff from Jack Quinn in terms of the point production. 157 shots per 60. And what is this? 136th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. 125th on ice scoring chances, 4 per 60. Yeah, it's some decent stuff there. I don't know. It is a weird spot. So Jack Quinn, like, has shown out at times. There's been some metrics that I liked with Jack Quinn at times. I do think that there's a future for this player, but if he's not, like, it feels like there's no chance that Jack Quinn gets on the top power play. That's a bit of a problem for me, right? I know that he was there in the last game, but again, like, I don't know. Maybe I'm being too harsh on it. Maybe it is a situation where like um, Alex Duck, for whatever reason, is just gonna live on the second unit for all time. But I really don't trust Jack Quinn on the top power play. Um, that's kind of my problem with him at the moment. I like the Cousins Paterka situation on the second line there. That like feels pretty solid to me, giving Jack Quinn some floor. But again, it's like a 15 to 16 minute situation. Even if he's getting some top power play looks from time to time, I just don't think it'll be sustainable for fantasy purposes. Even if he's top power play, it feels like he's more likely to fall into a streamer category for the rest of the season. Moving along, Dougie Hamilton, 3 assists in his last 18.5 minutes average time on ice, 36 shots per 60, 19th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 5th in Corsi, 4 per 60, 8th in on ice scoring chances, 4 per 60. This is really just all about if he's going to get top power play, if he's going to hang on to that or not. It really does hurt his point potential that the even strength minutes have really come down as of late. But even with those minutes coming down, he can still be plenty usable if he maintains top power play. It's just, yeah, it's a really tough stretch for Dougie Hamilton right now, and he needs to turn it around sooner rather than later with Luke Hughes knocking on the door. So I don't think there's really a takeaway here. Like, I don't think you can move off of Dougie Hamilton right now for anything big. I don't think you're going to pulling the wool over someone's eyes, moving off Dougie Hamilton for like anybody that was drafted at roughly the same level. Yeah, that's kind of the problem for me. Maybe, Noah Dobson has been a disappointment this year for a lot of managers. Maybe you could trade Dougie Hamilton for Noah Dobson. You might feel okay about that in the end. But that's kind of the only player I can even think of that you might actually feel okay about moving off of Dougie Hamilton for, and kind of getting rid of that risk that Luke Hughes takes over. So that's at least a thought. But yeah, it feels like you're just kind of stuck with Dougie if you've got him on a roster. Roman Yossi, next up here, 1 assist in the last 3 games here. He obviously missed some time. 24.5 minutes average time on ice, 18 shots per 60. Yeah, on the season now, Roman Yossi, 18 goals, 61 point pace. And the on ice metrics look terrific. Like, it's same old Roman Yossi under the hood, it really feels like here. 55% IPP, 7.5% shooting percentage, 9.5% on ice shooting percentage is really the problem. Talked about it with Blake yesterday. It's really just the on ice shooting percentage for all of these Nashville players just feels so terrible. For whatever reason, they have just been completely unable to finish basically the entire season. I feel like that should turn around. I don't think that feels unsustainable for the players, the personnel that they have on this team. So yeah, if you can buy low on Roman Yossi, I would. I still view him as a top 5 fantasy defenseman moving forward. Let's get back to some comments. Ronster Monster 96 in a Bangers Cats league, wins, goals against average, save percentage, shutouts. What do I do with Lankinen? Hold or try and sell high for another goalie? I mean, if you can sell Lankinen for another goalie, I think I would definitely entertain that. Yeah, it feels like it's going to go Demko's way, even if it's a bit more of a tandem. Lankinen should be the 1B there, and so I don't think you're gonna. I just don't think you're gonna get a lot of value out of Lankinen, even if he's doing well in the starts he has. I just don't know that those starts are going to be good, good enough, I should say, to kind of counteract the lack of volume that I'm foreseeing here. So yeah, it's a tough spot for Lankinen. So I don't think so. I don't think I want to hang on to Lankinen. I think I would try and sell high if you can still for another goalie. Realistically, the best time to sell Lankinen was probably 3 or 4 weeks ago when he was in the middle of looking amazing. So hopefully you can still get something for him though. CG, my playoff schedule favors Dallas, Montreal, Ottawa. Best claim: Slavkovsky, Ben, Giroux, or Norris. Interesting stuff. Ben has been on a heater, but feels like just a kind of a product of more opportunity. Marchment out, Sagan obviously out. Don't know that lasts forever. Slavkovsky has potential, but obviously that potential is not coming through right now. Drew is the safest in my mind for sure, but probably not the sexiest. Yeah, I might take. I think if you're looking ahead to playoff schedule now and trying to think about a pickup for the playoffs right now, which I'm not sure that that's even the correct way to think about it at this point in the season, then I guess I would go Giroux just for the safety. I think Slavkovsky still has the highest upside, but it's really uncertain whether he'll actually hit that at any point this year. All right. Danny asks, what do you think about Huberdeau's current form? Is he turning into a hold? Let's throw Jonathan Huberdeau in here. Jonathan Huberdeau, 4 goals, 6 points in his last 5, 20 minutes a night, which is nice. Nice to see him getting that kind of deployment. 120th shots per 60, 44th individual scoring chances for per 60. Good on the underlying numbers in terms of the on ice stuff as well. 25th Corsi 4 per 60, 40th in on ice scoring chances 4 per 60. It's a 34 goal, 62 point pace, 18.5 minutes average time on ice on the season. 66% IPP, 23.4% shooting percentage, 11.8% on ice shooting percentage. Yeah, I'm going to say that it's most likely a scenario where Huberdeau's running a little bit hot. Definitely on the goal scoring, he's running hot, but it is nice to see him come up with a little bit higher of a shot number and an individual scoring chance number. The average time on ice doesn't hurt as well. I'd like to see that. Yeah, do I think that he can continue at a 62 point pace? Yeah, I think he can. Could be trending towards a little bit more of a hold, but I don't think you have to. I don't think Jonathan Huberdeau is gonna morph back into a point per game plus player at any point here. So, like, if you had to move off of him, I would still not consider him to be all that much more than a streamer. So you can hold him for now as long as the underlying metrics are looking good and the puck's going in the net. Sure, let's hold on to him. Let's keep that thing going. But I don't think that he's shown enough yet to where I'm like, absolutely, he's a hold, no questions asked. CG, better rest of season, Bennett, Fiala, or Drouin. Drouin on power play one. Yeah, Drouin did get back on the power play one in the Colorado Avalanche practice today. Bennett, Fiala, or Drouin, I would take Fiala there pretty conclusively. Hoover has been on fire over the last month. How much of a mirage is the current production? What do you think his outlook for the rest of the season is? Yeah, so I think I've just addressed that there. I do think 62-point pace is not out of reach, but that's probably closer to the ceiling than the floor. Frank asks, would Ekblad be better option than Montour? This is going back to the Shots and Hits League, the Roto League. Yeah, I think I would take. Ooh, I think I would take Ekblad over Montour at the moment. I'm pretty worried about Seattle in general. Montour has fallen off since Dunn has come back. Yeah, a little bit tough there. It's slightly better, I guess, but same tier of player probably. Sorry, just catching up. Reed, Dougie Hamilton, would you prefer Heiskanen or Hamilton? Rest of season points format was offered Chychrun for Hamilton as well. Interesting. Chychrun, I think, has way more upside. I shouldn't say way more. Dougie Hamilton still has a ton of upside, but he probably needs more minutes to hit it. Chychrun has been overproducing for sure, but still on power play one at the moment. If that continues, he could sustain a good chunk of his production. Still shows out tremendously in all the metrics that I like to look at. Heiskanen is a really interesting one as well. Feels like he's been completely snake bitten this year and should be better. I think Heiskanen feels like it's not gonna be like a big win rest of the season. So that's the tough part with Heiskanen. Chychrun feels like it could be a big win, but it could also be a big loss. So it's a risky swing. Yeah, Chychrun is the ballsy play. Heiskanen is like the soft pedal play, I guess, where you're just like hoping not to lose too much on your Dougie Hamilton investment. And then, yeah, just holding Dougie, I guess, is like you're praying that he hangs on to power play one. So, yeah, it depends, I guess, on what you need. If you need some floor, then maybe Heiskanen. If you need some upside swinging, then maybe Chychrun. You can also just hang on and pray. CG, Orlov, Lacombe, Burns, or OEL as a hold. None of these guys really represent a hold to me, but give me Lacombe for the moment. Also says best fantasy content out there. Like and subscribe, y'all. Yeah, anybody watching right now, we've got a bunch of people in here, 30 people watching at the moment. If you can like and subscribe on YouTube, that really does help. Jordan, hey Nate, who do you prefer between McCann, Schmaltz, and Terry rest of season standard Yahoo Points League? Ooh, interesting question. Interesting question for sure. I think I would take Schmaltz, honestly, at the moment. Schmaltz really showing out underlying stats. He's got an assist already, power play assist in this game that's ongoing between Utah and Seattle right now. Schmaltz, and then flip a coin between Terry and McCann rest of the season. Yeah, I think that's how I'd take it at the moment, but I think I would do it that way. CG takes 2 seconds to support the hard work and passion the crew shows. Yeah, like and subscribe. Do appreciate it. All right, back to the list. We've got Brock Nelson next up. 1 assist in his last 17 and a half minutes average time on ice. 303rd in shots per 60, 190th individual scoring chances 4 per 60 in the 200s in the on ice numbers. Really tough stretch for Brock Nelson here. Yeah, it doesn't look good for Brock Nelson. They're messing with the lines a lot, and that hasn't helped. The interesting part about all of this is that actually the New York Islanders as a team at 5v5 look terrific in the last little bit. Second in, what is this? So third in Corsi 4 percentage, or sorry, Corsi 4 per 60 in the 5v5 score and venue adjusted mode on natural stat trick. And then in terms of the scoring chances 4 per 60, they're second, only Vegas at 5v5. So yeah, the underlying numbers actually look really good for New York as of late, but Brock Nelson has not really been contributing to that. I mean, I don't want to speculate too much about injury, but it feels really weird that basically whatever he's good at is not really coming through right now, even though the team is actually under the hood looking okay. Yeah, weird spot for Brock Nelson for sure. He is probably the Islander that I have the least faith in at this exact moment, for whatever it's worth. John Carlson, 0 points his last five. I think it's actually 0 points in his last seven. Blake and I said John Carlson was featured again on the flagship show yesterday. 23 minutes average time on ice. Underlying numbers are nothing to write home about, basically. 7 goal, 52-point pace on the season now, 38% IPP. That's not going to be that low all year long, but it does feel like there's at least this potential problem of Jacob Chikrin taking over at some point. I don't know how likely that is. It doesn't feel super likely, but it is. Even if there's a 25% chance that Chikrin just takes over the top power play from Carlson and Carlson gets bumped off it, that's something you got to factor in. And so it is concerning when he has these stretches. As long as he's on top power play and getting 23 minutes a night, I don't have major concerns about Carlson. My only real concern is if there is that 25% chance that Chikrin does take over the power play one situation. Lane Hudson, goal, 4 points in his last five, over 21 minutes average time on ice, 130th shots per 60, 149 individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 6th in on ice Corsi, 4 per 60, 48th in on ice scoring chances, 4 per 60, on a 5 goal, 57-point pace on the season, 51% IPP, 12.6% on ice shooting percentage. I think this is probably a sell high moment on Lane Hudson. Again, one of these players that probably isn't giving you a whole lot in terms of the peripherals. He's not a guy who shoots a lot, not a guy who hits like at all, not a guy who blocks a lot either. So really, you're just hoping for all these power play assists as he feeds Line A. That's basically the best that you're hoping for here. And there is still the chance that he goes real cold. If I've said it once before, I've said it a million times, but rookie players are some of the most unpredictable for fantasy purposes. So, yeah, it might be a sell high moment for Lane Hudson for me, honestly, right now. Yeah, they have Mike Matheson there who has and will run power plays again. So I think that Lane Hudson has to keep up a good level of production. I think he's a terrific player, don't get me wrong, but he is a rookie in the league, and rookies go through extended stretches where things aren't going their way, and that is still a potential issue. And so I find it hard to just believe that Lane Hudson will be a 57-point player rest of season, especially with a high IPP and high on ice shooting percentage. Back to the comments. I've got a thank you in there. Appreciate you. Richard says struggling to find someone to drop to activate Barzal in a Bangers Cats. Bottom of my roster is DeBrusque, Sorokin, Kemper, Ben, Vetrano, or do I just drop Barzal? I would not drop Barzal. I actually think Barzal is a pretty big buy low at the moment. In a Bangers Cats, yeah, DeBrusque has been decent. Ben has been popping off as of late. I think it's probably Ben is the drop for me, even though he's been popping off as of late. That feels pretty unsustainable in my mind. Yeah, I think it's probably Ben that I would drop there. Vetrano as well if you don't need the hits, but Vetrano is a really nice source of shots and hits even when he isn't scoring. I do think the scoring will come back a little bit moving forward. B-Zone, Deep Leagues only. What are your thoughts on Jake Evans? He can't keep up this pace, right? No, I don't think Jake Evans will keep up the pace. Nice stretch, but yeah, has all the earmarkings of a completely unsustainable hot stretch. CG saying that we discussed Evans on the latest pod for sure. Is Schwartz worth a look? I feel like every time I recommend Jaden Schwartz that he just completely fails to produce. But yeah, the underlyings look actually not too bad for Jaden Schwartz in the last little bit. He goes through stretches like this in this game that's ongoing right now. He does have a couple of assists. So yeah, I think he makes sense, yes. But every time I've ever recommended Jaden Schwartz, he's immediately gone completely silent, and that's concerning. So yeah, that's I guess all I can really say is theoretically, Jaden Schwartz makes a lot of sense to pick up, but do I believe in it based on past experience? I find it hard to. Jordan, hey Nick, could you take a look at Tom Wilson's numbers? If you haven't already, we can throw him in for sure. Tom Wilson just 1 goal in his last 5, still over 19 minutes average time on ice, 291st shots per 60, 254 individual scoring chances for per 60. That's tough. Obviously, not what you want to see there in terms of the scoring chance generation from Tom Wilson. He, in the last game, played with PLD and Protas. That's a second line there. 305, Corsi 4 per 60, 287 on ice scoring chances 4 per 60. Yeah, in like obviously in Bangers Cats formats, Tom Wilson still worth hanging on to, still on the top power play. But yeah, I do think that in a just like a true points league, Tom Wilson is much more of a fringy guy. Still power play 1 though. That's interesting to think about. Did Schwartz get another point? I think he's only got 2, right? Unless my source is incorrect. Sorry, monkey brain there. Going back to Tom Wilson. Yeah, it's a tough spot for Wilson. He has been very productive. He's probably was a little bit overproductive in the early going. 18% shooting percentage is still pretty high, so that might come back here. But I do like the player. The concerning part, obviously, is the underlying stats in the last little bit, but the time on ice is still there. The power play is still there. I think I'm holding on a little bit longer, but yeah, let's see what we get in the next little bit. All right, back to the list. We're getting close to the end here. 3 more names. Arturi Lehkonen, 3 goals, 4 points his last 5, 20 minutes. Average time on ice, 211 shots per 60, 207. Individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 179. Corsi, 4 per 60, 138. On ice scoring chances, 4 per 60. Lehkonen fits squarely into this group of all the Colorado wingers who are basically just completely dependent right now on who they're lining up with on any given moment. He's not on the top power play, but he is playing with McKinnon and Shushkin on the top line. That's a good spot. He can sustain, I would say he can sustain above streamer level production from that spot. Top line with McKinnon, but power play 2, I think Lehkonen is a hold. Below that, it starts to get dicey. And so that's where I'm at. This is a guy, though, that will get the big minutes from Bednar. Has been completely trusted by Bednar in the past and will be moving forward. Have no reason to doubt that. And so even in stretches where Lehkonen goes cold, you might want to consider hanging on to him if you can. Mikael Granlund, 2 assists in his last 5, over 23 minutes average time on ice. Underlying metrics never look good with Mikael Granlund, but he still keeps scoring points. Yeah, it's a situation where he was probably due for some regression, and it's kind of hitting. And yeah, it is not the best line that he's on right now with Klim Costa and Luke Kunin. That's not the line that you really want to see there. So that, I guess you have to say that concerns you to some extent for sure, but he's still on the top power play. Mikael Granlund at 23 minutes, like he's just going to brute force his way to like a 70-point pace if he's getting that crazy amount of deployment. So not someone I'm looking to drop just yet. I will say Mikael Granlund also probably a guy that feels like a trade to one of these contending teams a little bit later in the season, and he ends up like a second line left winger somewhere, not on the top power play, and then his fantasy value is just completely shot. So yeah, might be a guy that you want to move off of before any of that happens. Last player on the list, Patrick Laine, 2 goals, 3 points his last 5. The average time on ice is skewed because of that game that he left with injury, but 16th shots per 60, but 16th shots per 60, 345th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. Wild stuff. Laine is really just showing out as a power play merchant at the moment, and honestly, not that much more, which is obviously concerning. You want to have your players doing well at even strength as well. The Alex Newhook and Kirby Dach treatment on the second line to go with Laine is not great. That's never going to fare super well for you in the long term, but it does seem like Laine should be a fixture on the top power play moving forward. He's obviously bought himself some time there with the results that he's had in the early going since returning from injury. So that'll be there, but in the end, I still wonder, is that enough? Even in the games where he wasn't injured, like not in the game where he left early, it's still not getting big minutes, right? 16:03, 16:35, 15:29. Is that enough for Line to sustain much more than streamer level production? I'm not sure. But yeah, I think he should be. He's definitely a guy with potential, 30 goals, 60-point potential, and maybe he gets better deployment at some point, and then he has even more. That's possible, but it does feel like a player who's probably going to be pretty inconsistent week to week and game to game. So you have to factor that in with Line if you're rostering him, in my opinion. CG says, "Go Canada, go! Big one tomorrow night. Damn Yankees, Latvia, great feel good story. Yeah, great storylines out of the World Juniors this year. That's for sure." HNE, I think HNY, to all of you out there and the AG fellas, Happy New Year to everybody. Happy New Year to everybody who tuned in for the stream. We've reached the end here, but hopefully this brought you some value and helped you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the stats you see on the screen, if you're watching on YouTube, they do come from Natural Stat Trick, which is a terrific free resource. Many thanks to the band there for supplying the music for this podcast. Be sure to check out their Spotify as well. That's going to be it, folks. Much love.